So take a deep breath in. Ah. Oh, wonderful. I'm so happy you're here, Tula, because I was so intrigued and impressed by your Instagram account, Loving Tula. But before we dive into what you spread on that account, I would love to hear where you're from.
Yeah, so I'm from Kenya and Switzerland, and I was born in Switzerland, and then when I was 7 we moved to Kenya with my family. And then in 2021 I came to Netherlands, and then I studied psychology here, and then that's what brought me to the Netherlands.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. And when did you start Loving Tula?
I started Loving Tula on the 1st of May 2023. Yeah.
And what does it stand for?
So love for me has always been like a guiding value in my whole life. And so when I was thinking about the name, actually the way it started was very funny, because on my personal private Instagram account I used to just do these weekly challenges, like for myself in self-development. For example, I worked as a barista, and sometimes I would be in situations where I would feel a little bit like small, and so I would make challenges and share it with the rest of my audience. Like, for example, today I'm going to go out and humanize everyone, because sometimes we like the people that we feel intimidated by, we kind of put them on a pedestal. So I would kind of share these little challenges in my life, or today I will go and spread love today or something. But then I wanted to make an account for this. And then I was like, what describes me? And I'm really bad with coming up with names. So I was just like, what do I love the most? Love. Okay. And then I just say Loving Tula.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you started off with these challenges.
Yeah.
And I think I missed those because we got to know each other just maybe half a year ago during an event of WBII in The Hague. And from there on, I bumped onto your Loving Tula account.
Yeah, that was really nice, because I actually had those challenges in my private account, and then when I started Loving Tula, I moved it onto there, and I was doing a lot of like I think I did weekly challenges for like the first 6 months of the year when I started the account. But I think it became too much to do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you are very much multi-talented, I believe. You have your nose in different businesses. Could you share some of that with us?
Yeah. So I think you mean like more with Loving Tula in my school?
Yes, yes.
So Loving Tula for me was just the platform where I didn't want to like be specific with a niche, but just to talk about all things psychology related, all things the human existence related. And then I also was I still work as a barista part-time alongside my studies. And then I was also studying full-time, and then I had another job that I was working as well. But and I also really like like content creation or creative design, and I made my own website and everything. But I really like it a lot. It brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, you're like a new age inventor,
like,
doing all different kinds of stuff. And Loving Tula is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, could you share more about like the non-dual message of love that you are sharing?
Yeah, so non-dual love actually is I learned about later I learned that it was non-dual love, but I think that the horses in my life, because I grew up with horses, were actually the ones that taught me about it. But then I kind of was able to put a name on what I was practicing when I came to university. But non-dual love is basically that conviction and unwavering trust in our interconnectedness and our oneness as humanity. And sometimes we become so lost in all of these titles and distinctions that separate us from each other that we actually start to believe them. And then we're just moving further and further away from each other. So I feel like non-dual love for me means talking about the things that we don't want to talk about, talking about destigmatizing, like grand destigmatizing of so many things that we have placed shame on, and finding our way back to each other. So I think that's what non-dual love for me means. And that flows very nicely within another topic that I'm very passionate about, which is conscious relating and conscious leadership, because I think non-dual love is like the compass of really practicing conscious relating. And you can see that in the subtle ways that we react with each other, the subtle ways in which we use language, And yeah, so that's what non-dual love basically means for me.
Yes, and there are two things that you mentioned that I would love to dive in. Like the first is that you grew up with horses,
Yeah.
right? And the second, could you tell us more about the different experiences that you had with people who are like not radiating that non-dual love?
Yeah. So I grew up with horses because my sister, we used to go to equine assisted therapy, and I was actually the one that ended up liking the horses more than her. And I was only 2 years old, and then my parents started taking me because I would ride like cats or dogs and be like, horse, horse, horse. I was so obsessed with them.
That's wonderful.
And then they really know, and I really thank them for noticing that, because they really took me every weekend to go see horses and to be with horses. And then when we moved to Kenya, in my family we've had a lot of struggles because growing up with like a sibling that had, like, for example, autism and other like problems in our lives, it kind of complicated a lot of things, but it also opened up my perspective. But when we moved to Kenya, that was a big challenge for us because it was such a different world, you know. And for me, the first thing I was concerned about was horses. Can I ride in Kenya, you know? So I was so devastated about it. But my mom, we were once walking in a mall and we saw this poster for like a horse riding school. And then I first encountered Abraham, which was my first pony. And later on, we just grew to have such a beautiful relationship. I almost can't put it in words. But and then in 2015, we were robbed as a family. So people broke into our house and they shot my dad in the stomach. And it was really like not a very nice experience in our lives. And a lot of other really bad things happened that have like taken a huge toll on my family. But that was kind of my first experience with like people who are, not practicing non-dual love. But it also was the first time where I became aware of like systemic issues in our society. For example, those people that robbed us, when they first came into the house, the first thing they did was go to the alcohol cabinet and drink everything, because I don't think they could do a lot of those acts when they were sober, you know, because it was so. And I think they, at the end, like after when that happened, I just realized that, like maybe, you know, whatever their reason.
How old were you at that time?
I was 12.
You were 12.
Yeah. And my sister was 15, and then my mom wasn't there. She was working because she used to work in Saudi Arabia, but she flew home the next day, and I remember she was heartbroken, like just, you know, also being the child that was kind of parentified and having. After that, I was really kind of making sure that we're all okay, because I always said like nothing happened to me then, because they kind of left me the robbers since I was a child.
So were you present in the house?
Yeah, I was, but like they didn't really do anything directly to me, like they did to my dad and my sister. So I feel like I always used to tell myself nothing happened to me. But then later I realized that was also a traumatic event for me. But then I realized also that these people maybe. You know, I realized that people don't do mean or things for no reason. You know, I think that, not saying that it was right what they did, but Kenya does have a lot of systematic issues, like with poverty and crime, and it's all very interconnected with a system that is failing us all. And I think that's the first time I realized non-dual love, that we are so convinced of our separateness, and you see this in our politics, in like society, and you know, it's like a vicious cycle. And then when I moved to Netherlands, but after, I feel like I wouldn't be the same person if I didn't have that robbery, because it kind of opened my eyes and it made me understand the importance even more for love in this world. And then when I moved to the Netherlands, I started working. I had to be self-sufficient financially in 1 month of moving here because my parents, we also had like a really hard time with COVID with their company and everything, which was also a really big challenge for me, because it was, I've never worked before, so 1 month coming here and having to just have everything and be depending on yourself. That also really taught me a lot. But I also had to work a lot of service jobs. You know, even right now with my part-time jobs alongside my studies, I work as a barista now. And even now I can see how convinced people are of our separateness. because sometimes I work in an office building, and some people will come in and just, you know, on the phone very quickly and be like, yeah, give me that, you know, not even hi anything, and they don't see that I'm like a human being, you know. And maybe it's not directly like the person's fault, because, you know, they're also busy and they have a high pressure work culture, but it's just we have kind of created a system where it's becoming so much easier to be convinced of our separateness, and we're engaging with things that are actually satiating the need that we have for each other.
And it's becoming normal to like neglect the human being who is actually assisting you with something. Or,
exactly. And my grandfather in Switzerland, he used to tell me that when he was younger, on the trains, you would just speak to random people next to you, you know, like just have a normal conversation. But now I wonder how much of us are like choosing to be on the phone, because the phone is also a way of connecting, you know. It's like the dopamine rush in your body. It's like, it's really like a way of feeling connected. And I wonder if that wasn't there, if we would actually connect with each other. And
I truly believe that we would connect more with each other in a physical space than grabbing our phone. Because of course the phone is a device through which we connect with human beings. But it's still with a very great physical distance. And of course there are advantages to it. But the disadvantage of it is that we create more space between human beings.
And I think that like the phone, we have created so many innovations that give us instantaneous feelings of connections, or that fulfill our needs, so to say, but it's all an illusion, because like love is scary, you know, like to actually take the risk to try to connect with someone, it's very scary. It's not always...
And it has become scarier.
But we have exactly. And I feel like in a way we have tried to remove that risk by giving us something that we can always be accepted by, which is like the phone. You know, like that connection, just like scrolling, and like that is instantaneous connection. There is no fear that needs to be overcome. And I think that's why, like I think we need to sort of find our way. Like we have tried... I don't know where I was going with this.
No, it's interesting. We jumped onto this topic because you shared your experience as a barista with all of these people who are so busy and not open for connection.
That's true.
Yes.
I think that's what I was
saying. And you're actually here to bridge that gap, right? With everything that you share, or with every tiny project that you're setting up, you want to bridge that gap between the human being and having true meaningful connections with another human being.
And having like those, and I think that's something that I really try to embody in Loving Tula, is like just talking about the things that nobody wants to talk about, you know, or like having, even with my friendships, talking about things that we can clearly see but we're all trying to like avoid, you know, because that's where the growth lies. Like you only find more of yourself and each other on the other side of that discomfort. And I think that's what non-dual love is about. It's kind of breaking past those distinctions that we have put in place, because those distinctions actually serve a purpose of self-protection, you know. So I feel like non-dual love is telling us to break through that self-protection and like to find more of each other on the other side. And I think that's something that we have lost touch of.
And it's I fully agree with you. And it's hard to start with creating meaningful connections, but it's worthwhile. For sure. Like one of the topics that I love to talk about, and maybe is also a topic that is a bit scary to talk about, is like spiritual evolvement, like a spiritual development, right? And as you told me earlier, is that you have a really fantastic bond with Abraham, your horse that you grew up with from when you were 7. And please talk to me about that.
I think horses have like a sixth sense, you know. And there was the other day I was looking at, I follow this equine assisted therapist online, and she kind of bridged the gap for me of like why horses are so therapeutic for us. And she was saying how like horses actually require you to be a good leader. They require honesty, like in order to connect with them, because they're prey animals. And so you need to be honest with you. You can't run away from yourself when you're with horses, because they pick up on all of the little things that you're feeling. like horses by nature are very hypervigilant creatures. They look at how your body language is. They know how you usually are. If you come and you're not acting like that, they always know something's up. You can't. So in a way, like they're spiritual guides for us, because they're just, and without words, because sometimes we think that animals can't speak with us because they don't share the same language with us, but the way they speak to you, like soul to soul, is so loud. If you really take the time to listen, you know, like...
Could you share some examples of that?
Yeah, like mine wouldn't be so much with Abraham, but with Bagheera, my horse now. But because Abraham, he was like there for my childhood, and Bagheera kind of transitioned me into like my late teen years and my adulthood years. And he, like for example, it's a long story, but I had to sell him when I came to Netherlands. And that was like the most painful grief I've had to deal with, because it was like losing my child, because Bagheera was my first horse that was actually mine. Abraham, I was leasing him. And then that was so painful, like to lose him, because Bagheera was like my baby. And then I got the opportunity. I was so convinced I had lost him, but then the lady sold him twice to someone else. And then somehow she was selling him again, and she asked me if I wanted him. But I was in Netherlands. And I worked like a donkey day and night to raise the money to get him back, because my parents, unfortunately, they wanted to help me, but they couldn't. And I worked so hard to get that money, and I got him back.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
I did.
amazing.
And that was, so like with Bagheera, when I was coming to terms with selling him, I remember I was trying to avoid it so much. And horses are not very affectionate creatures like cats or like with dogs. Like they like their space, but that day when I broke down, Bagheera just came to me and he just put his head right here. And, you know, usually they don't like to be smothered so much, but he just put his head there. And I was weeping on his face because, and it was kind of like he was telling me, it's okay, like, I know you have to go and I know we'll find our way back to each other. And that day, like, I was so, I remember I just let go all of the pain of realizing that I had to sell him. And that was when I was 17. And he has never done that. Like he just, for 10 minutes, he just put his head here, you know, and I was weeping and crying and just holding him. And when I told my friends, they all couldn't believe it. They're like, yeah, horses don't really do, but it was the most magical experience. And now I realize that in a way, he was telling me, that's why I think like horses they're more spiritually inclined than us in a way. And I think he knew that we were going to find our way back to each other, because I went back, every time I went back to Kenya, I went to visit him. And I think he knew that now he's my horse and now I don't have to worry like that. I'm going to lose him again. And then with Abraham, it was very similar, because he passed away last year. He was very old. He had a very good life. But I went back to Kenya after 1.5 years of not seeing Abraham. And then I wanted to spend the day just like we did when we were younger, you know, and I can't ride him anymore because he's a pony and I'm big now, but I was just, you know, I don't even need a rope, he just follows me, like we just walk together. And he was the kind of horse that if I'm riding, I would ride him like free riding without any saddle or bridle, and if I would just in my spirit just say, let's stop, he'll stop. You know, and like he was so...
That's really gives me shivers, you know, just hearing that you communicated with him through your spirit. Yeah,
it was so... I didn't notice that I was doing this as a child, because you're so... It just feels so natural. You know, like when you're young, you don't have that inner critic so much. It's not as loud as it is when you're older. You just... Things come so much more naturally. And I think kids generally are more spiritually inclined to some extent, because they haven't been exposed to that much socialization. You know, when children tell their parents, oh, I'm seeing something in my room, and their parents are like, oh, it's nothing, you know. So like, I think children kind of just go with what they feel, and like, you know, it depends on the environment, of course. But I told Abraham, I was on that day with him, and we went on the same walk that we did when I was younger, and there was always one corner around this tree. When we were younger, I was riding him. We would go walk and then turn and then run together. But I was riding him, so he would gallop up the hill. But we did it one last time, but I was on the ground and we were like looking at each other, getting ready to run, and then he took off, and then he waited for me up on the hill, and I remember he was just looking back at me with his head and waiting for me to come, and I caught up with him. And then we walked back up to the stables, and I gave him his dinner, and then I was going to go back home to Netherlands.
Yeah.
And I really whispered in his ear when I hugged him, I hope this is not the last time we see each other, because that day just felt too nice, you know, it felt so...
It was too perfect.
It was too perfect. It was too perfect. And I think now that I look back at it, because he passed away a month after, and I was in Netherlands when that happened, and he passed away on his birthday, which is crazy. And I remember, I think that was his way of saying goodbye to me, and telling me, I think he knew that his time was coming, you know, because he was very old, and I think he knew that, yeah, he just knew, you know, it's, I think horses just know. They know, and that's why I feel like I'm the person that I am now. That's why I love conscious leadership so much, because...
And did you if you like look back on this experience, did you know that he would pass? Because I think if I listened carefully, you mentioned something like, I wanted to spend a day with him, as if I was the 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that intent is already very special.
Yeah.
Right? So
I didn't expect that he was going to pass. That day, that's why I think this is like your intuition as well. Something that just feels right to do. And I've had experiences like this before, where I had to go like to catch a bus for a very important meeting at my school, and there was something in me telling me, turn around, turn around, turn around, like a voice. Like a strong voice saying, turn around, go to the train station right now. And I just didn't question it. I went and I started, because I can either go to the bus station or to the train. And then while I was going to the train, I checked, and the bus just got cancelled, and I would have missed that very important meeting. And it's like just an inner knowing. And it's the same with that day with Abraham. I just felt like, you know, it just feels right. Even when I started loving Tula, I can't even remember being conscious about starting it. It just happens naturally. And I think that's how it was for me with Abraham that day. But I realized it at the end, because I was hugging him, I remember, in the stable, and I was like crying because I had to go back to Netherlands, and I was like, I don't know when I'll see you again. You know, please don't leave me, because it was too good. And I was crying, and Abraham was the most, you know, he doesn't like a lot of people. He doesn't like people hugging him, but he was just standing there while I was hugging him, and I just felt like he was saying goodbye to me, and I realized that at the end. And I had the most weirdest feeling in my stomach when I left the country. And then I got the message on his birthday, and then that was really... But at the same time, I'm so grateful that I had that moment with him. I feel like that was him saying goodbye, and that gave me all the closure that I needed. And now I still feel him sometimes in my heart, like even when especially when I'm the part of me that doesn't doubt, that just goes for it. That was Abraham. That's Abraham in me, because Abraham was the kind of horse that he went for it. He didn't, sorry, pardon my French, but he didn't give a fuck about what anyone wanted. He just always did what he needed to do. And no one could force him to do anything. He was a very stubborn horse. He only does something if he wants to. And I think that I see Abraham in me when I just go for it, when it feels right and I do it, or like when I honor how I'm feeling in every single moment of my life. I think that's Abraham.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't have much words for that, but I fully feel your story, right? That also brings me to that when I met you and when I heard your voice, I felt your spirit. Yeah, and I thought, oh my gosh, she has such a strong spirit. Yeah, and I really wanted to connect with you. And I, of course, beforehand, I didn't know what would come out of that, of course. But I thought, no, we will see each other again, and I will speak to you again. And that actually also brings me to the question, like, do you think that actually thanks to the presence of your horses in your life, that your spirit has stayed that strong?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because I think this is one thing that I learned. Like I did therapy like a while ago, just to kind of understand my past and self-development, you know. And then I realized in therapy that the horses actually played a different role in my life, because I was always, especially after the robbery, and you know, just going through puberty and into teenagehood, and I was the kind of teenager, I had terrible jokes. I can't bring like banter or like funness, you know, or making fun of others, like, you know, that kind of things that teenagers are into. I couldn't like do that so much. And so I wasn't always the people. Well, I had I still have my childhood best friend, but I was never with like the crowd of like the cool, you know, the cool people. I just couldn't provide like that banter that they were looking for.
Me neither. I was like in between those groups.
Yeah, me too. I was always like, let's talk about emotion, let's talk about how we're feeling, you know. That was my realm. Even when I was young, I always loved talking about the things we don't like to talk about. And then I realized that I was so okay with not having that in my school life because I had everything that I needed with the horses. They provided me with so much love, like, that they gave me the courage to do things that scare me, you know, to, like, for example, where we met, I really wanted to talk to you. I was fangirling so much, but I was so nervous. But I think they gave me the courage to do things that make me scared, the courage to do things that, you know, because that courage is allowed to be there because there's the knowing that I'll always be loved, you know. There's nothing I could do that will make me unlovable by those horses. And that's what I love so much about them, is because they just facilitate this space for you that you are loved no matter what, you know. And I think that's something that I really needed in my whole life. And they didn't ever need to know what was going on, but their soul knew what was going on. And I think that was the most, I think that also allows me so much to create space of love for other people, whether that's my friends. And I'm not perfect all the time, but love is something that I really try to like facilitate for other people. Just a space where they can come and be who they need to be, you know, and space to expand, you know, space to make mistakes, and space to not let them be judged by their first impressions, you know, like space
just
to do more exploring.
Space to be a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
Because your spirit is intact.
Yeah.
Is whole. Yeah. In its essence.
Yeah.
And yes, yeah. Well, I can picture that.
Yeah.
And I see that it's turning a bit darker. So
yeah.
One moment.
No problem.
I'll be back and turn on the light. I think this was more helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so you were always the one who started speaking about emotions.
Yeah.
So
I was also like the advice friend. Like, I loved I think that's how a lot of people who study psychology start out, even though later we learn that advice is not really good. But I think I really loved being able, it brought me so much joy seeing that people felt safe to confide in me. And a fulfilling kind of joy, not like a draining kind of joy, but just very fulfilling. Yeah,
I think that brings me to when I was younger and started coaching people, and I started sharing my stories with friends, and most of them asked me, like, is this not draining you? Like, isn't it hard to hear all those heavy-hearted emotional stories? And I was like, no, it's like you said, that I felt really, like happy to be able to help someone, right? That they were comfortable to confide their stories with me, and that, it helps to get those stories out, and also the emotions which are part of those stories, you know?
Yeah, and even if the stories aren't like because in my like little experience with coaching people, sometimes it isn't like the stories that what matters for the people, but it's more like the meanings that they have attached to that, or like the symbolic meaning of like that story. And I think that's what we do a lot with ourselves, is we understand the world in such a symbolic and meaningful way that we can so quickly get lost in these stories. But at the same time, those stories are so deserving of being heard and like space to be, you know, expressed.
Yeah, and I truly believe that when people start talking about their personal stories and what they have experienced, that it will transform.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So that brings me up to ask you about emotions, right? Because earlier we spoken to each other about regulating, of self-regulation.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it started raining really loudly.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So you are at the forefront of holding space for emotions, like for everyone's emotions, right? So what is in your vision so important?
I think it's so important to be able to get rid of all of the stories and the social scripts of what people tell you about an emotion and to just feel it. Because and that is even so hard to say because it's so hard to do. But I think sometimes, like, let me use yesterday as an example.
Yes.
Yesterday, I just wanted to be in my bed and cry and to be sad and watch sad movies. And like, I heard the voice of like, of I don't know, when I think of voices, I always trace where they come from. And for me, it's mostly from like pop psychology on social media, or like this of people saying, you know, oh, when you're sad, do this. You know, if you're sad, it means this. If this, you know, if you're experiencing this, it means this. It always means something. And I think I had to get rid of that and just be like, just because I'm having a sad day and I don't know maybe why I'm sad, doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me or that there's something that needs to be fixed. I can just be sad and cry. And once I released, because those like statements and scripts that we've held on to, they also provide us with a lot of safety, hence why it's hard for us to let go of them. But I think once I made my way of just talking with myself and negotiating with myself about why I need to release them, I was able to just be sad and cry, and I had the best cry. I really needed that cry so much. And I think it's the same with...
But like, you still, sorry to interrupt you, but I was triggered by the negotiation part, right?
Yeah.
So you still negotiated with yourself about, okay, so do I want to do this right now, or is it safe, or is this the best way? Yeah,
for me, when I thought negotiation, I was thinking more about like asking myself about the origins of the social scripts. Like, okay, but how do you know that? How do you know something is wrong with you? You know, like to kind of, because that's why affirmations don't always work for everyone, because you're trying to tell yourself something that you have such strong resistance to, and then it just backfires. And I think sometimes negotiating with myself and that self-talk of self-affirmation, self-validation, productive self-validation of being able to tell ourselves like, no, it's okay the way you feel. And because sometimes our thoughts run so much on autopilot that we're not able to interrupt it and be like, hey, but what if it's not like that, you know? And sometimes you might not even believe what you're trying to interrupt your autopilot with, but and sometimes all you can do is try your best to not be suffocating in these social scripts, and that's still a win, you know? Like, even though yesterday I felt so sad, like I wasn't extremely sad, I just needed to cry, you know? I just needed to release. I felt my body was telling me to release, and I didn't fully believe that it was okay for me to do that, because those social scripts were still kind of weighing down on me. But even though I'm able to still release my tears while trying to tell myself that it's okay for me to do that, is already a sign for me that I'm going in the right direction, that I'm trying to show up for myself, that I'm trying to make space for myself. And sometimes we become too focused on what it's supposed to look like that we don't acknowledge the effort, you know. And even just trying to think differently or trying to even question a thought is such a big achievement already.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think the same is with anger. Like, a lot of us have trouble, I think, experiencing anger or like expressing our anger. And because sometimes when we're angry, we're afraid that it means we won't be loved because of it, because often anger has been translated to be, or has become synonymous with being violent. It's the same way that, like, for a lot of children, when they're angry, we say, don't be angry, go to the corner, you know, or like anger is such a bad thing to feel. But sometimes you really just need to listen to like angry music and just feel your anger, or just vent to a friend and to just tell your story, because the story, I feel like we're allowed to kind of hold in our brains that the story isn't always the truth, but sometimes the story needs space, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I discovered about processing anger in my work as a coach and somatic therapist is that anger is also an emotion that teaches us what our boundaries are. Yeah, and it also teaches us to express what we need to express, because when you hold anger inside, it will disrupt the natural flow of your energy level. You will leak life force and vitality if you hold on to anger. So it actually needs to be expressed. But I think because of what society or what kids hear when they grow up, is that they're not allowed to feel the anger, and that they will be dismissed, when they show the anger. Oh, that's awful. That's awful, because it also shows who you are. Like, what are your limits, but also what are your values in life.
I think all of our emotions serve as like an inner compass, they're directing us. And I think anger is very tricky though, because sometimes anger can lead to like intrusive thoughts of like, does this mean this, does this mean that, like a lot of assumption making that sometimes hinders us from seeing like with clarity. And I think that there's so many missing gaps and so many conclusions that have been jumped to with how to navigate anger, that we kind of miss the full picture.
And this is also, I think, the fact that people are afraid of anger because of those intrusive thoughts.
Exactly. Because I think whenever, especially if you're someone who intellectualizes your emotions a lot, we tend to be like, okay, I'm feeling this means, I'm feeling this means, or why did I feel this, when did it start, and it's very like, that's also in a way escaping how we really feel. And I say this as someone who also does this a lot. Like, it can't ever just be, oh, I'm feeling sad, because it never was safe to just feel sad in our childhoods. It always had to mean something. Like if you're sad, like even for example, children not getting to do what they want to do, that's a big thing to adjust to. Like maybe not being able to go to the park when you wanted to. That's even us, we struggle as adults, we struggle when our plans get cancelled. Why should we expect children to be okay with it, And I think that sometimes when children feel sad about things, we're like, oh, you're just making a big deal. Is someone feeling moody, And so it was never safe for a lot of us to just feel our emotions. And that's kind of how we have learned to navigate ourselves in our lives, in our adult lives. So I think we have to kind of find our way back to. That's why anger for me is an emotion that I have such strong affiliation with, because I feel like anger is so important. It's such a, it's kind of like power. Like power in itself is not bad, but how it's used is what's more important. And I think the same with anger. Like a lot of good things have happened in the world because people have been angry with injustice, angry with discrimination, angry with inequity in society. So anger is actually something that we can use for social change, in a pro-social way. And it's not always like a bad thing. And I think sometimes, like for example, I had a very terrible interaction with, he's a owner of this office in my job. He's very ignorant about like things about, like when relating with people, and especially not very careful with his word choice. And I remember I was so angry one day about like the things that I had to hear, because at the office as a barista, you hear a lot of things, a lot of crazy things. And I went home to my friend and I just needed to rant about it. I'm like, can you imagine? And sometimes even gossip has become there's a difference between gossiping and venting about something. And I think that that's a distinction we also have to make, because people are afraid to share their experiences with others because they're afraid that they're doing something wrong. But we're allowed to vent, we're allowed to confide, and even about things that make us angry. And I think it also depends on who we're talking to, because some people can hear that story and like make an assumption about like, to compartmentalize people into good or bad. But there's people who have that capability to hold space for you and your story without compartmentalizing, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It brings me actually to that it is important to make a distinction between people's behavior and who they are.
Exactly.
So if you are annoyed by the behavior of that person, of course you need a space to vent your experiences. And it's not about being mean about that person or judging that person or gossiping, but it's about, okay, that type of behavior is not in line with my values. It bloody irritated me.
And I would even go so far as to saying that we're allowed to dislike people. And I feel like we're allowed to really get bothered by. This is something that has really helped me a lot in my path, not in the sense that, because I strongly believe in non-dual love, like the people that I dislike, and I know I'm disliked as well. I think none of us can be ever liked by everyone. And I think that we have to kind of make peace with that, because it is also a part of the human existence to just be very bothered by people. And you can do your self-reflection, like maybe I'm projecting, maybe there's something within me, but sometimes people are very ignorant, and sometimes people are, or not themselves, but they behave in very ignorant ways. And it's, for me, I see it more as a frustration of like somebody who is convinced of separateness. And that's where my anger comes in. Like individuals that don't like understand the power of language, or like how consciously they relate with others, and like those things make me very angry, and rightfully so, because when we're so away from oneness and we're going more into this direction of separateness, and we've seen how like psychologically unhealthy it is for the collective, I think that's why I think anger can be used in a pro-social way, because it directs you on like what needs to change, especially for change makers in this world. You need to remember what you're angry about. Remember like what is not healthy for the collective, you know, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
And while I'm listening to you, just different stories pop up, because there's a reason why my podcast is called Your Voice. Yeah, previously it was called Jouw Stem in Dutch, but I changed it to English because, yeah, lots of Dutch people speak English.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because I think many times while I was growing up, I was shut off. Yeah. So I think the words that were told to me from different family members in the Chinese culture that I grew up with, it was like, Chungmei, you don't talk about that. Chungmei, don't question those things. Chungmei, keep your mouth shut. Chungmei, you've heard this, but you don't. You're not allowed to spread that type of information. And at that time, I was so thoughtful, and I listened, to these remarks, and I didn't do it. You know, I just kept it all inside. But I think at some point I felt angry about it, or I felt sad about it, because in my worldview, I think honesty is one of my highest priorities in life. Just living an honest life with myself and with others. So if people are afraid to share the truth to the people who are nearest to them, I was like, that's not healthy. Yeah. It's just not healthy, you know. So I think it's good. It's better to be honest and receive the pain, and all these different emotions that can be really hard to feel, but at least it's the truth. You're living a true life. So I think, that has brought me in different steps towards the point that I'm to where I am now, you know, with inviting you and inviting people who are living their highest truth. So.
And I love that you like kind of facilitate a space where people feel, because I told you like earlier that I feel so comfortable sharing my life story with you. And usually it's something that I'm like, oh, like, you know, I mean, certain parts, but I really felt like a space to just come and share and to be expansive, and that also means a lot to me.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you also.
Well, that brings me to my last question to round up the energy talk. So what is your biggest life lesson up until now?
For me, I know, I even have this tattooed on me, but it's do everything with love. I think
you have it tattooed
on you. Yes, I do. Because, and I think that it's actually, I'm not a religious person. I'm more into like spirituality, Christian spirituality, but it's actually a verse from the Bible, and it's the ancient Greek, and the word love was actually agape, which I think is more closely resembling non-dual love. And I think there's a reason why it says with love, not like in love or for love. I think it was very purposeful to say with love, do everything with love. And I think that has been a guiding value for me my whole life, and I know it will be one for my life going forward. And it affects, because love has that, it's so powerful because it affects how you speak with others, how you speak with yourself, what you choose to buy. Like what you choose to expose yourself in, you know, like, I think it affects everything. And I think that's why, and I don't think we should understand love as like, oh, peace, love, kindness, you know, like all of that, like, you know, love is more about our interconnectedness and our oneness, and yeah,
and
that makes sense.
yeah, it does, it does, and to add to it, because you made me laugh with that move, love, peace, and happiness. It's like love is action, right? It's acting from love.
Yeah, and I think it's an attitude of life. I think attitude is like the best way I can. And what annoys me so much is every time I try to describe what love is, it's just an ineffable term. Like we're bringing something from the spirit and we're putting it into the language of the realm of language. So we're always going to reduce its real meaning. But I think it is something that all of us have felt and all of us can feel. But there's just so many things that are getting in between us. It's like an alarm that we choose to like shut off, you know. And I think it goes off, for example, when you're like when we're choosing to connect with our phone instead of with each other, the alarm goes off when we're kind of choosing to treat the cleaner very, like, even in the most subtle way, badly, because the whole world is screaming at us that it's a job that at the bottom of the hierarchy, you know. So we see it in all of these little subtle ways of interacting with each other. But I think it is like an alarm. It's already within each and every one of us, but I think there is discomfort when we're not in love, when we're not walking with love. And I think we seek to kind of satiate that discomfort by, like, you know, even Gabor Mate, when he criticizes everyone who looks at people who struggle with drug addictions, when we're all struggling with addictions as well, where we all have things that are actually satiating our need for each other, because it's become so scary to interact and to take that risk with each other, that we want something that is not risky at all, that can give us that connection instantly without any obstacle to overcome. I think especially in my generation now with cancel culture, even now, my professor was telling us that now it's becoming shameful to stay in a relationship, not just romantic but also friendships, because we have compartmentalized, especially with social media, people into red flags, green flags, good, bad. If they do this one thing, dump them. If they do this, leave them.
No.
That's really like the reality. Even like in my relationship, like when I choose, because it's brave to actually want to go and confront your problems and to work through them. It's a very brave thing to do. But now it's also becoming a shameful thing to do, because it's you're now settling. You know, you're not shopping for a partner, shopping for friends like how you like. You know, it's so, that angers me, and I want my life purpose to be to kind of remind us of the importance of love and to help people and myself meet the energy of love with more depth, because we are constantly meeting it with so much superficiality, and we see it in, I think sometimes you can tell a lot about an artist by their art. And if we look at the artwork of humanity, what we have created now, we have created a life that is so separate from each other, that is kind of, I don't know, it's becoming, I hate to use this term, but fleshly, you know, everything about the world and money, status, wealth, sex, drugs, like it's so much about, not really about who we really are. We don't trust that who we are and what we bring to the table is enough. And that affects how we relate with others. It's a vicious cycle.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I can talk about
this for so long. Yes, I know, Tula. Thank you so much for having shared your personal experiences.
Thank you also for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Sorry.
No, thank you. No, it has been a wonderful conversation, and it has really, truly fed my soul.
Me too. Thank you so much for like facilitating this.
Thank you.